Hello, and welcome to Varn Blog's Radical Engagements. Today we're talking about fan and patron of the show, Alexander Prähauser's recent post in English looking at the big picture. Alex and I go pretty far back. He's been a sporadic guest on the show talking about everything from Lord of the Rings and socialism to category theory and its relation to Hegelian dialectics. Today we are going to be talking about um, his recent musings, uh, and I'm going to be commenting on them like I normally do. Since this is on a free Substack, we can read it together here. And let's see if I can enlarge that a bit for you. Okay. Looking at the big picture about Alexander Prähauser. It's the strangest situation we find ourselves in right now. Though it looks like technological development has slowed down a bit, it is still going extremely fast if you look at it in historic time lengths. 1,000 years ago, we were still well in the Middle Ages. Where will we be in 1,000 years from now? I don't know either. At the same time, we have the problems with capitalism, which means the higher our technological level, the more crisis of overproduction intensifies. I believe this too, but this is one of the most contentious claims on the left. This is Varn talking. So, I think it's interesting that Alex assumes it. I also think the crisis of overproduction intensifies. I do not think it necessarily leads automatically to a final crisis, but nonetheless. Taking this together means that there's still an extremely unstable situation that cannot hold. Absolutely. But what are the possibilities? Socialism is clearly the most desirable, but nobody is really prepared for the most extreme moral responsibility of risking nuclear war to bring it about, and it's hard to see when enough people would be if the situation remains as it currently is. Maybe if we can play it just right, the likelihood will not be that high. We can conventionally argue that with the largest military in the world, the deterrence effect will be so large that other actors won't act. I take it for a given that we'll have to flip to the U.S. Or the likelihood might be pretty high, but it might not be obvious. But if not, well, the only possibility to convince people that it's necessary to risk nuclear war to bring about socialism will be by witnessing another or even a series of nuclear wars, thereby demonstrating that nuclear war is necessary symptom of capitalism, so that we have no choice but to risk transition to socialism. I'm not sure that necessity actually is proven by a singular act. So it would actually demonstrate the necessity of a series of nuclear wars, and all that would really prove by necessity is a high probability. But nonetheless, I more or less see Alex's point, although it's interesting that he thinks we pretty much have to risk nuclear war for this to happen. Newcomers might be confused exactly how the struggle for socialism would be so dangerous as to call a nuclear war. It's not simply that some epic ideological confrontation between socialism and capitalism would have to happen. There might be simpler causes. One would be that a revolution in a nuclear armed nation would turn into a civil war, which would turn hot. The second is that other capitalist nations decide they would rather try a regime change than write off the investments they had in a formerly capitalist nation. This is part what got the Cold War started. This danger could be somewhat lessened if the socialist movement is powerful enough in all the nuclear armed countries to mobilize against that involvement. Asterisk, yeah, popular opinion isn't enough right now to do that. So power here doesn't just mean cadres, or popular opinion being in your favor. That's foreign talking, back to Alex. But it would probably be serious even under almost ideal conditions. So a lot of people might not want to risk it. But of course, in the capitalism, it is only a question of time until a new nuclear war breaks out, and climate change will only heat things up further. I would say it's not absolute, and we've avoided it so far. But as time ticks on, I would agree with Alex that the statistical likelihood of it happening does increase. So it seems hard to avoid the conclusion that we'll have a nuclear war sooner or later. I'm just hoping it's going to be a small one, as far away from Europe, my home, as possible, maybe among the two of China, India, Pakistan. But even if it's the biggest possible one, humanity will survive it. The high end estimates of death for U.S. Russia war would be about 5 billion. Not good, but we were at that population level only fairly recently. However, lots of conditions would change, and since we have burned up most of the oil at that point, we won't have it anymore for use. I guess a lot of scientific knowledge would remain, though. So I don't see us literally going back to the Stone Age, rather to a pre-industrial society with much higher level of scientific knowledge. Uh, Asterisk. This would be the James Howard Kunstler view of the likely future, which is not primitivism or even necessarily localism, although Kunstler likes localism, but basically back to the 17th century, but with more knowledge of what led us to the 21st. This is also the future of John Michael Greer, our arch druid semi-reactionary friend. And it's something I think about a lot myself, because I do often think about what would happen if you have a large-scale nuclear war. I do not think it is the apocalypse. I wish people would quit talking about apocalypses all the time. Not because it's out of the realm of possibility, but because it is in the realm of unlikelihood. But mass death is not in the realm of unlikelihood, and there are differences. And perhaps the horror of mass death is mitigated when you believe it's everybody. Anyway, I don't know if over a long time we'll find a way to circumvent the need for fossil fuels and build, say, nuclear reactors without it, but I think so. Whoop. That's going to open up a can of worms in the nuclear, anti-nuclear, which is one of the weirdly most heated debates in my Patreon and Discord. And my position, which that in the long run, nuclear fuel is not ideal, but in the short run, it's a good transition considering what our options are likely to be, seems to make both sides angry. But I'm going to go back to Alex here, not make this so much about me. It's all just a question of labor time. It would be preferable, however, if it was only a small nuclear exchange, maybe between 2 or 3 nations above, or a limited exchange between China and the U.S., where both parties decide to pull the brakes after a few million are dead. Maybe after we'll get some new rules of engagement with nuclear weapons, saying that we should only use small ones. That would put an additional constraint on regime change attempts during the revolution that could be useful to us. I mean, that's assuming that regime change attempts during a revolution would respect international law, Alex. So that's a pretty big assumption. Although, on the other hand, if soldiers are willing to use nuclear weapons at all on their own population, they might not take much of a difference between small ones and really large ones. Yeah, a small one could take out New York City, for example. But to put it in a bit more positive spin on it, if the struggle for socialism were the cause of a second nuclear war, it might be taken by people as a sign to rather give up, whereas if it happens purely because capitalist nations, it would only serve as an additional motivator. I mean, that's a binary that I don't know that I accept, Alex, but I can see it. Long term, though, what are the possibilities? It might be that humanity thins out more and more as automation increases. This is not exactly ideal, but it might open up possibilities for socialist revolution. It wouldn't remove the problem of nuclear weapons, though. They're already there, and someone will have them. However, it has to be considered that nuclear weapons aren't that long-lived, only reliably usable for 20 to 30 years, though they're trying to get them up to 75 years, and they are expensive to maintain, so if the profit rates get really low, It might just start to decay. Yeah, that's my hope, honestly, is that it's going to be too expensive to build nuclear weapons as opposed to other things with nuclear power uh, before we actually use them. It's a dark hope, but it's one where I kind of agree with Alex. Other than that, well, conceivably machines might kill us, Nick Land style. But, and this is a big question, if we create machines in the capitalism, they will probably inherit the drive for profit, right? Yeah, they are likely to have the teleos of the system that produced them, especially if they are corporate intelligence made for profit maximization. If they are defense intelligences, on the other hand, they might be immensely territorial and hyper aggressive, or at least defensive. In either case, they will inherit our problems. Yes. Yes, they will. Our robot overlords, as AI currently proves, aggregate not just our best, but also our worst qualities back at us. Particularly in the first case, though, it is entirely conceivable that a tendency towards capital concentration would have them merge again and again, getting smaller and smaller until only one remains. And then maybe we can have socialism. Oh, Alex. I think these kinds of thought experiments are actually useful, though, and that's why I read this. Not that I like the idea of talking about nuclear war, but I actually do think it's something we have to talk about more realistically than we currently do. I mean, the Russia Ukraine situation actually has put it back on people's discussion monitor. But for most of my life, it's been one of those things that's like a relic of the past in the Cold War, where people thought nuclear annihilation was somewhat likely. And since it never happened, we've just kind of gotten slack about it. There's an attempt to drum up concern about it during the war on terror, dirty bombs, etc. But again, no one really seemed to take those threats seriously for very long. Our current nuclear stockpile is being updated all the time, but lots of these weapons are degrading. It's interesting to think about where this might go. Maybe, like Alex, you should run some counterfactuals to see what you think might happen. After all, the longer the weapons exist and are maintained, the more likely they are to be used. And on that note, we'll see you around. If you'd like to support us, we have a Patreon where you can find even our friend Alex here. If you like to support us at high levels, you can even commission shows. Now, they're Patreon shows, not public shows, but nonetheless, you get one a year if you subscribe at our $10 level. We have affordable levels, though, and the affordable levels are really what I push. 3 for all audio, 5 for audio and a few additional videos, in addition to what comes out here. It roughly comes out to something like 20 things to listen to or watch a month, because I put out a lot here, and then you get the audio for that. Yes, there's the free audio stream with ads, and I'm not dropping that anytime soon. So if you don't want to subscribe, but you want to listen as opposed to watch on YouTube, don't want to see my mug, you can listen to the interviews about a month later on the free podcast channel. My podcasts actually do significantly better than my YouTube. Probably because they don't monetize my YouTube. I don't do that for a variety of reasons. One is the equivalent of academic freedom. Anyway, you can find more at Patreon/Varvlog. And you can just like and subscribe if you don't have it to spare. We'd always like subscriptions here, comments, reviews on Apple podcasts, Apple Music, whatever it's called now, Spotify, etc. Those help us out too in spreading the educational mission of this program. Thank you so much, and have a great day.